Well, I am a very happy boy right now for two reasons. Number one, I'm in beautiful Almeria, Spain, where the roads are fantastic and the weather is apparently somehow even better. Number two, and I'm just going to jump right to the conclusion here, I just got a day with the best motorcycle that Moto Guzzi has made, I think, ever. Historically, if you're kind of looking for a Guzzi, it's always been for a very specific type of buyer. And I think with the Stelvio, they've created something that they're going to poach buyers from other brands from. It really is that good. But I probably should explain myself in some more detail. So with that in mind, I'm going to do the usual what's good, what's bad, what's iconic about this bike. I want to start with what's new though, and basically everything. In a sense, this is a clean sheet design. It does share the engine from the V100 Mandello that was recently built, but the Stelvio name was around about a decade ago. It was stopped production in 2016, so it's 7 years later, almost 8 years later, the name is back. And at the end of the day, this is a pavement-focused adventure touring bike. I think from a marketing standpoint, it's maybe positioned as a little bit dirt capable or dirt friendly. Realistically, it's just as capable on dirt as your average sport touring bike, although it does look the part. Really where I think people are going to focus on is on-road with this, and it does shine at that. I think the highlights are going to be price, $16,390. There's a separate version that's $1,000 more. I'll talk about in just a second. But again, $16,390 in the US. This bike is currently available at your local Guzzi dealership. The motor is 1,042 cc's. It's a V-twin with opposed cylinders that stick out there, as you can see. 115 horsepower, 71 pound-feet of torque, 4.5 gallon fuel tank, and it weighs, I think, 542, or just about 540 pounds, ready to ride. So those are the important numbers. Let's talk a little bit more about the details here. What's good about the bike? I was really blown away with both the engine and the handling. So like I said, the V100's been out already. A lot of my peers here at this launch were at that launch as well and have ridden it and have experience with the engine. I did not prior to today, but it is an absolute jewel. The two things I really like about it, first, it still keeps some of that Guzzi traditional character, having the cylinder stick this way, you rev it and the whole bike shakes a little bit. Similar feeling as you get on, say, a BMW Boxer. But the motor has finally come into modernity. It's got dual overhead cams, it's liquid cooled because that's able to rev higher, makes more power, is smoother. I was really pleasantly surprised by the lack of vibrations. Part of that might be because yesterday I was riding a V85 TT. But again, it's a very smooth bike, both in the way it delivers power, but also just minimizes vibrations that you feel as the rider or passenger. So the engine, a big fan of that. I'm also a big fan of the handling. This has a 19/17-inch wheel set. It's got Michelin Anarchy tires on it. But there's a combination of the ergonomics when you're riding on it, very comfortable, very upright. The bar gives you good leverage, but the bike responds really well on the edge, even despite the kind of 80/20 on-road, off-road tires. It responds really well to trail braking, and it just feels, it's just a good connection between what you're doing with your body and the bars and what's happening on the road. This bike's a lot faster than it has any right to be, or what I was expecting, both in terms of on the twisty roads that we were handling, and even at one point where we may have topped 140 miles an hour on the highway to, let's just say, test the wind protection. So speaking of wind protection, it's one of the things that's new for this bike is going to be this adjustable, electrically adjustable windscreen with 5 separate, or it's really infinitely adjustable within a certain range. You've got a 5-inch TFT dash. There's some good and some bad with the electronics. One of the things that's going to be an option here is it's called the Rider Assistance System, RAS. It was developed by PFF, which is Piaggio Fast Forward. They were working with MIT in Cambridge, and they created a technological platform that utilizes radar, both front and rear units. So earlier I was talking about how there's a separate model. That's the separate model, the ARAS model. So that's an extra $1,000, so it'd be a $17,390. For that, you're gonna get the 2 radar systems, and that gives you a couple of things. One, with regards to the rear radar, it will tell you basically, it gives you blind spot monitoring. So in the mirrors themselves, you've got some yellow lights that will warn you if someone is, for example, passing you, coming up on the side that you might not be able to see. I think it's a little redundant in a sense. You should, if your mirrors are set properly, you'll be able to see it anyway. But it's all in the name of safety here as things get more powerful and crazier, just to add a little more safety back into the mix. So there's indicator lights in the mirrors, and then there's also on the dash, in the bottom of the dash, an indicator as well. So if you have someone coming up on your left side, then the left mirror will have a light, and the bottom left corner of the dash will light up amber. If you apply the turn signal that way, so if you have someone in your blind spot on the left side and then you apply your left turn signal, then that indicator on the dash actually starts flashing at you as well in an attempt to get your attention and prevent you from hitting someone. So that's on the back. In the front, what you can get with the front system is like a warning that you're coming up on something too quickly. Personally, to me, if you can't see what you're about to hit in real life in front of you, I don't think seeing a tiny icon on the dash is really going to help. But it does add the option for adaptive cruise control. So cruise control, regular cruise control, is standard on this bike. But if you did pay the extra $1,000 for the radar, then you can pay some extra money for the option of adaptive cruise control. Pricing has not been set in the US as far as I understand yet. It's roughly 200 euros out in the European market. So, it's not an exact translation or correlation, but that kind of gives you a ballpark as to what that will cost. If you get the adaptive cruise control, as you've seen on a few other bikes now, if you're following someone and your cruise control is set at 70, but they're doing 64, well then it'll slow down to 64 automatically for you. The radar system is one of the things that like I mentioned earlier, I just don't, in this situation, especially seeing as you're paying $1,000 and not getting the cruise control, the adaptive cruise control, I don't really think it's worth it, just to me personally. I wouldn't get it. I get the base Stelvio, which is still a very, very fine machine. While I'm complaining, might as well talk about a couple of my nitpicks. So the radar the radar system is one. I just don't necessarily think it's worth the money. The behavior of this bike at high speeds is absolutely incredible. It's really stable. It's fun because it handles well, it gets up to speed quickly, and it behaves well. I think that's probably the best way to put it. It's very well behaved at high speeds. I think at low speeds, under 20 miles an hour, that kind of thing, it's a little uncivilized, it's a little rough for two reasons. One, I find that the fueling, especially if you're in sport mode and that kind of thing, if you're just off idle, if you're in first gear doing 10 miles an hour, that kind of thing, a little bit of walking speed, it's a little jerky, it's a little kind of like, it's kind of rev hunting a little bit, it's just not very smooth. You got to eat up a lot of it with the clutch. The other thing is that the transmission is not great on this bike. It's probably, I would say it's the weakest part. A lot of my colleagues who had previously ridden the V100 Mandello, that was something they noted about it. And to Guzzi's credit, they have improved it. I mean, they gave us some reasons as to why the feel had been improved, changes to the shift drum, or sorry, to the drum and the clutch and that kind of thing. I had not ridden the V100, so a lot of my colleagues here that had ridden the V100 previously say that this is better. I didn't have that baseline. I'm sure it is better, but I still think it's not very good. The shift from first to second is rough. The shift from second to third sometimes is rough. The quick shifter also, because of that, it suffers. So unless you're really pinned and banging through gears, it's kind of inconsistent, and that's frustrating. When you're in a touring situation, you want to know, or you should be able to expect how the quick shifter is going to behave, and I really felt like I couldn't do that. So there were frequently at low speeds, I wouldn't use the quick shifter, I would use the clutch instead to make it more predictable. So that's probably my main complaint with the bike. One last little thing would be, I think for that $16,390 price, there's a couple of things that maybe feel a little bit cheap. Like the master cylinder is great. The feel is really good. The calipers themselves not as strong as I would be hoping for. Brembo 432s, which have been around for at least a decade. It doesn't have, heated grips aren't standard. I think they should be at this price point, especially for the intent of this bike. At one point today, we were in 40-degree weather, and we were definitely missing the heated grips there. And the suspension is more than adequate for the purposes of this bike. But I think especially if you're a faster rider, it would be nice to be able to adjust compression, and you can't. So it doesn't have fully adjustable suspension. In fact, I think some people were even asking why, like, so the V100 Mandello comes with electronic suspension. This does not, so, and that's fine. But I think that this should have had fully adjustable suspension. I know these things add to the price point, and I had an interesting discussion with some of the employees here, Moto Guzzi employees, about the sort of the debate of, all right, well, if this is, I think a lot of people are going to compare this to a GS, like the new R1300 GS. I mean, that bike starts $3,000 more. It's almost a $20,000 bike with the base version, and if you follow BMW, you know that they don't really bring the base versions into America. They always add packages, so you're gonna add a couple grand on top of that. So there's a big price jump there. So while spiritually there is, I think, some comparison to a GS, especially with the opposed twin engines and the shaft drive and that kind of thing, Moto Guzzi is actually specifically targeting like a Ducati Multistrada V2, Suzuki V-Strom 1050, the road version, and that kind of gives you a feel for the price range and that kind of thing that we're talking about. So, they've made their choices. If I was running Moto Guzzi, which clearly I'm not, but I would probably have added some of those extra features and then gone for a slightly higher price point. I do think that a lot of this bike does feel premium, and that kind of goes towards what I think what's iconic about this motorcycle. Like I said at the beginning of this video, this is the best thing that Guzzi has built, at least production-wise, ever. It is such an incredibly capable motorcycle. I know I spent a bunch of time talking about some small issues just because I think that could be helpful if you're debating between this or another bike, but I can't overstate enough how good this motor and the chassis are to make a very fun and comfortable motorcycle to enjoy, week-long tours on. I didn't mention it because I didn't see it, but this does come with luggage. You can get bags with it, and it's a very clever mounting system. They say that you can fit a helmet into each side. I was wearing an Arai XD4 today. It looks like it would fit if you took the beak off. So I think on a regular street helmet, you should be able to fit helmet in there. Again, very clever thing. I just mentioning that because of this idea of you could tour on this and no problem, and frankly, you should. But going back to the main idea, in the past when people talk to me about Guzzis, and when I like my buddies who are big Guzzi fans, they're quirky people. This sheds all of that. This is I think really the first bike that I could just tell someone, it doesn't matter who makes it, you're just gonna enjoy it. It's a great bike, and it's gonna steal clients from other companies. And I think that's a great thing, obviously, for Guzzi as a brand. The more people that are aware to it will appreciate the history of it and some of the design things that they kept traditionally here. So I mentioned before that there's the extra model, or the additional model with the radar. That won't be available for about 2 months or so, call it late late Q2 of this year. But to me that doesn't matter, because this is the version I would get the base version, and that's available right now. I think Guzzi, again, really knocked it out of the park with this bike. I'm very excited to see how it goes for them. And I'm just hoping that they take this motor and put it into a new Griso. So we'll see how that goes. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I'm glad to answer everything I can to the best of my ability. And thanks for watching.